Hey guys, what is up and welcome to Learning Chess and Strategies. Okay, so what you want to start out with first is obviously the basics. So you want to know where everything is placed on the board. There are two sides. There's the white side and then there is the black side. You always know the white side it is on the side where the white square is on the right and there's an H under it. And this is because for notating, some people like to notate with their game, so that's why the H is always on the right. So let's just start with the basic setup. And just like that, it's set up. So the setup of is really not that difficult. It's pretty much mirrored on both, not mirrored. It's mirrored on both sides. So on the second row, you're going to have all of your pawns, and these are called pawns. On the two corners, H and A, you will have what is called a rook. Some people call it a castle, but it is called a rook. So those two rooks are on the corners, and then on the second to the rook on G and B, those are called knights. Some people call them horses, but they're called knights. So yeah, they go there, and then next is the bishop, then the king. So with the king is always on the opposite color of what you are. So if I'm on the white, the king's on the black. And the queen is the total opposite. It is on the color that you are. And then pretty much mirrored. Bishop, knight, rook. In the beginning of your game, you're only going to have 18 moves to start with. People usually only go with the original move of this. So it's pretty much the E pawn going up to the fourth row. And this is a only one-time move by pawns. So what you can do is on the very first move, take your pawn and move it 2 squares up. You can move it 1 up if you want, but you are allowed to move it 2 up. So anyway, put this back in the middle. This is usually the people's first move, just because it opens up the bishop's lane and the queen's lane. So now the other person will usually come back with the same move, just because it does the same thing, and then I'll get into the rest of I'll get to the rest of the gameplay later. So I'm going to show you now the moves that each piece has. The pawn, as you saw before, can do 1 move forward only at the beginning, or 2 moves forward. But also when it attacks, it only attacks diagonally. So just like that. So now you took the other person's piece and you're winning. Okay. So another thing, actually this is a move that most people do not know, is so you start right here, you go 2 up, and then you somehow make it to the 5th row, and then he or she takes his pawn and puts it right next to yours. What you can do is you can kind of, I don't know how to explain it, you can diagonally attack him like that, and you're taking his pieces. But that is the only scenario in which you can do that. Okay, so this is the knight. The knight moves like an L, so two up and one over. I put this more in the middle because it gives it more room to go. So pretty much what it can do is it goes up 2 to the right, 1, or it can go down. So that is 1 over 2 down. This is 1 over 2 across, 1 2. You get it, right? Yeah. So it's pretty much looks like an L. The bishop is probably tied in the 4th best in the game. What it can do is there's actually 2 of them, and they're both always on different colored squares. So they can only travel diagonally, like that, And the same thing for the other one. How they attack is the same thing as a rook, except diagonal. So they go attack, take their square, and you just got their pawn. Okay, the rook is the second, well, not second, the third most best piece in the game. One reason is because of his ability to move. So he can move pretty much an infinite amount that way, only until he reaches a piece. He can move only horizontally and vertically. Horizontal and vertical. When he attacks, he simply just, he does this. So that is how he attacks, and he pretty much destroys the other person's pawn. Okay, so now, the most important piece in the game, the queen. The queen can pretty much move in any way besides the way a knight moves. So it can move horizontally, vertically, diagonally, and that's the only way it can move. But it is the best piece in the game, so try and protect it at all costs. The king moves only one space, so only reason he's important is because you protect him the most. He only goes like one space, you get it. Okay, so here is how to win every single game of chess you play, as long as you keep practicing and you just do not rush. So here are a few types of moves that you should always try and build and look for, so you can destroy the other enemy team. This is a common one. This is called a pin, and there's a few types of these which I'll show you. This is the first one with the knight. So what this knight can do is move 2 up, 1 over, and at this 1 is checking the king. So what checking the king means is that it's pretty much in the position to attack the king. At this point in the game, if this does happen, you are forced to either move the king out of check or destroy the piece that is checking the king. So in this case, because it's checking the king and the queen can't take it, the king has to move out of the way and you get the queen. Okay, this next pin is with pawns. This is probably the best scenario you can get besides the knight, because if something does, okay, so pretty much let me just show you. So what you're gonna do in here is you're going to take your pawn, move it up. It is attacking the knight, and at the same time it is attacking the bishop. If the bishop attacks the pawn, then the pawn gets the bishop, and it is a pawn for the bishop. So in this case, he would be taking the pawn, because it's either take the pawn or take nothing. So here is the last type of pin you can do, and this one is the hardest to try and get. So it's pretty much with a bishop. You wouldn't really be pinning anything unless there was, let's say, on this side, there was a queen like this. So if this bishop was over here, okay, and then let's just say it came right here, what it can do is he has to take the queen, because there's no way the queen can get out of it, or it's going to take the rook. But this usually doesn't happen. You'll only, if you're gonna be like this, let's just say this, you're gonna go right for the rook. You're not gonna try and pin them first, because that's just not gonna work. In this position, how am I going to get the queen when the knight is so far away? Well, not because it's in an L shape, no, because this is one of my favorite moves to do ever in chess. This is almost how I win every single game, if I can get into this position. But not exactly position, it's the concept. So yeah, pretty much what this is with the removal of this knight, the king goes knight, the king goes into check because of this rook. So what you can do is move the knight out of the way to a spot where it can then attack the queen, but at the same time the rook is already checking the king. So since the queen cannot. Well, the queen technically can block this by just simply going in front of the rook, but that's going to come in the removal of the queen. So in any way, let's just say the queen was down here. So in this way, the king would be forced to move out of the way, and the knight would take the queen freely. Okay, in this position, what is the best thing to do? Well, what the best thing to do is to do this. Don't mind that the bishop can take the queen. That's not important right now. Let's just say it couldn't. So what you would do is you would take the pawn and you would move it up. What that does is that attacks the queen while leaving your bishop open to pin the rook and the king. As I said before, that doesn't usually happen much, but I didn't put in the fact that you could take the piece and then do it. So with this, what he would probably do is defend the queen, because the queen is better to be defended. So the queen, he would probably move it right here to counter check you, but you're just gonna get out of it. So let's just say he moves all the way back up there, okay? And so now your bishop is free to go take this piece. His king is now pinned, moves over, takes the rook for free, and at this point he probably isn't gonna win, just because the take of a rook or the queen is just, it's hard to recover from unless you're really good and you outsmart him right at the very end. Okay, and here is the last thing. This is called trapping. This usually is the best with the queen, but you can do it with anything else. So pretty much what trapping is well, trapping. So how trapping works is you force, okay, so let's say it's my turn, white's turn. You move up like that, okay? So now the queen has nowhere to go. Its only moves is moving to h5, but that is guarded by the queen. It can't go to h6 because that is guarded by the rook. It can't stay here, obviously, because it's being hit by this and the pawn, and it cannot go down because that's where the bishop is. So trying to trap is a good strategy, but it's really hard to do, and for me it only usually happens by luck when I see it. Okay, so the most important thing about chess is to think ahead. If you don't think ahead, you don't win. That's just how it is. Unless you're playing someone who's really inexperienced, they probably won't either, but if the other person is thinking ahead and you aren't, you are going to lose every time. You're going to lose every single time, because that's how important thinking ahead is. So just to wrap it up, remember to do these 3 things. Pin, and put a piece in front of your king, and to put him in the checking position, move the piece away from your king, making him checked, and while he's checked, take one of his pieces. That is one of the best moves in the game. And the last one, think ahead. Well, thank you guys for watching, and I hope this little tutorial / strategy video helped you. And if it did, please be sure to leave a like, comment, and maybe subscribe for more material that will be coming down the road. And remember, this channel is not just about chess. I also have a few videos about aquariums, tutorials. I have vlogs about them, and sooner in the channel, or like 2 weeks from now, will be video games. And I also have I will also be putting up a video, about like some gardening questions and stuff like that. This is the everything channel, so obviously almost everything should no everything shouldn't be on here. I'm rambling too much. Okay, see you guys in the next video.